Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Human SOS show. We're on episode 129, still rocking along, and look forward to hearing from everyone. Hope you will let us know where you're joining from, and of course, be a part of the conversation, engage. That makes the show a whole lot better. So, Anton, you want to open up our topic?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we're going to be talking about coaching today. We talk about human sustainability on the Human SOS show, which obviously makes sense. It has three parts, right? We have our life, we have work, and we have health. And we talked about health last week. We talked about life the week before, or whichever order it was. And today we're going to talk about work, which is coaching. Coaching, the reason it's a important topic for human sustainability is that it's the whole concept of leading people, in a way that is sustainable. It's helping them by meeting them where they are and having them kind of create their own path and guiding them through questions. And that's what we're going to be talking about. How does one coach, as a leader? How does one even coach, maybe even as a parent? It doesn't really matter. I think the best way to do it is through coaching. Kevin and I were both coaches. We've been coaches for a long time. I've been a health coach. I've been an executive coach. Lots of different things. Right now, I'm going to go through another coaching certification. Kev has his own background with it. But fire away your questions around coaching, anything to do with the topic. Put them in the comments. We'll be sure to give you a shout out and as well as answer those questions. So let's start with some shout outs.
Yeah, welcome, Nada. Glad to see you with us today, as always. And Rick and Ashfaq, glad to see you as well. And appreciate you guys being here this morning or whatever time it is for you guys. For us, it's early. And one of the things that we need to understand if you're going to be a coach, by being a coach, by its very nature, you are a leader. Wrote an article several years ago about being an accidental leader. We have a lot of people that are in roles that are leaders by default. And unfortunately, though, they aren't prepared to be leaders because they don't think of the role that they're in as leaders. And coaching is one of those things because you've got to really be ready to lead people into what they need or what they want, depending on your coaching relationship.
A lot of leaders are burning out today. They're not exempt from this issue that we're seeing in a workforce. And I think leadership burnout, actually, I know leadership burnout is more prevalent than even everyday employee burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Yet less people are talking and caring about it because they're thinking leaders take on the responsibility, they take on that burden, they get paid more. And all of that is true, but we still want to help leaders to lead better because a burnt out leader is going to lead their team usually to burnout. And being able to delegate, being able to coach people and letting them make decisions that are going to empower the business to grow is very important because it's a learned skill. I see, and I've been there myself, right? Trying to do everything as a leader, not trying to micromanage, right? It's not what I'm saying all the time, but in a way, you do end up micromanaging because you tell people always what to do, right? You're not leading them to those decisions, and you burn out very, very quickly. I had eight assistant managers or program managers, whatever you want to call them, when I was working as a leader last, and I burnt out because I simply couldn't run eight teams. I couldn't run eight departments myself, but I was trying to because I wasn't a very good coach. I wasn't able to talk to people, set goals, understand what their direction was, guide them in that direction. And I was trying to be everything for everybody at once. And, as I was doing good at first, and then things weren't going so well because I literally just got burnt out.
Well, and one of the basic, uh, most critical pieces in being a leader is defining your vision and being able to communicate it because it is the shared vision that allows us to delegate and empower our team members to do what they need to do as part of the team and as part of accomplishing the vision. That, again, the shared vision is the key, because if you don't, if you have a team and you're trying to lead them without a shared vision, you're going to always be pushing to for motivation, and we can only do so much to motivate people. And that's what another reason for burnout. We spend so much time trying to motivate people rather than them being motivated by shared vision with us as a leader. And sometimes motivation is like trying to push a wet noodle uphill. It doesn't work well, and it's frustrating, and it will cause you to burn out. So starting with that vision, that place that everybody rallies around as part of what's going on. When you begin to do that, then you take the constant motivational speeches, constant motivational activities. You can take some of that off of the table, so to speak, and begin to focus on other things, including our energy. So welcome, Sharon. Glad to have you with us.
Yeah, it's interesting how you mentioned motivational speeches and a lot of those high effort activities to get people motivated. Through coaching, you're able to say less, but make higher levels of impact because you're asking questions that are very relevant and you get to know people on a very deep level. And then you connect to that very intrinsic level of motivation, not the stick and carrot extrinsic motivation, but more that internal motivation, because you understand what matters to them, right? And you're able to accomplish that through knowing them. And then the next step is, once I know what really matters to you, now I empower you to make that happen yourself. And we create that autonomy piece, right? We create that ownership. And I think that's some of my failures as leaders came in from lack of creating ownership within people. Because if you don't feel like you're owning something, you're going to either come to me all the time as your leader and ask me what to do, or you're just not going to give it a full amount of effort because it doesn't really represent you. It doesn't represent your personal brand when something's moving forward and you don't feel like you have ownership. When you don't have ownership, you don't feel like you have full control, and that is not a good way to motivate people. So great coaches, they know how to be able to understand, get to know, and then create that level of ownership and then guide through questions, right? That's what coaching is all about. Coaching is all about asking the right questions. It's all about framing questions in a way that makes people create insights, and then they apply those insights that moves whatever it is we're trying to accomplish forward.
Welcome, Kadia. Glad to have you with us. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If not, let me know. But definitely ownership is an important factor. And just like ownership in a team is important, and it is so key. And ownership or an indication of lack of ownership is what we've talked about before, shows up in quiet quitting. People that don't have ownership are going to go through the motions to the extent they have to, but no more, no less. And that's not a good place to be. And if you're, as a coach, and you apply principles of leadership, you again begin to help your mentee or coaching client to take ownership of what they need to do in what they're trying to grow in, what area you're coaching them. Another element that, again, we're looking at the leadership aspects of coaching is knowing ourselves going in. Knowing our strengths, our weaknesses is really important, because using that as a backdrop, then we also need to get a feel for the strengths and weaknesses of, just like with our team, we need to know the strengths and weaknesses of our team. If we're coaching, we need to understand strengths and weaknesses of the person we're coaching, because it is through that understanding that we can begin to help them set up priorities and begin to put your coaching direction or guidance or your questions based on those priorities, which are based in strengths and weaknesses and that understanding. And real important to get that and apply that principle of leadership in a coaching relationship. Let's see. Rick has a comment here. Says, going back to no I in team, together everyone achieves more. Indeed. And we've got to help the person we're coaching to recognize that it's not, if it's just about them, then it's going to be a challenge. It needs to be part of what they are part of.
One of my favorite definitions of team is a sum of individual parts is greater. A team is greater than the sum of its individual parts. And no team that is not being coached is going to amass to that. They're going to continue to be just their individual parts and be no more than that. And that's what quiet quitting is. We covered that a few, maybe a couple months ago now, I can't remember, but people say, describe to me exactly what my job description should be, and I will go and do that. Well, you're just an individual part at that point. If you don't care about the broader unit, if you don't contribute to other people slightly, more than what your job description is, the team is never going to function in a way that is at its potential. But there's so many other reasons why it's bad. It's just people are not going to have fulfillment. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with just going to work and punching the clock and making your paycheck if that is what you want to do. But it's not good for an overall team. And I'm not talking about from output performance for the business. Yes, that's part of it, but you have to come in and be at your best to feel at your best. If not, it's just going to be tough. And if somebody's constantly micromanaging, if somebody's constantly, just telling people what to do all the time, that person will never create that kind of team. Coaching came from the word of getting people from point, coaching word came from the word coach of, the transportation vehicle. And you're never going to transform a team by just telling people what to do. I look at this from a very early age of I coach soccer for my daughter, and my mentor, who's a different soccer coach, he hardly ever coaches on the field, meaning that while players are playing, he's not coaching them. He's not telling them what to do. When they come off to the sideline, they'll review what happened. They'll discuss what went well, what needs to be adapted, and then lets them answer those questions. And then he lets them put those questions into action. And it transforms these little girls at 10 years old. It works for them at 10 is the same way as it works for 20, 30, 40-year-old people within the workplace. And you have to trust. That's another thing as a leader and a coach. You have to trust people to answer the right way and try out, even if it's not the right way, right? That what I've seen bad coaches do, because I've coached coaches on how to coach, and they'll give people opportunity to answer a question, and then it's wrong, and right away they're like, no, that's wrong. Do this. I'm like, well, you might as well just told them. Like that's not the way to do it. Have them answer something. Go practice it, go try it out, learn from it, and then follow up again and build on top of that. And that's what creates this kind of, person that is at their best. You have to let them lead themselves.
Yes. In fact, the foundation of being a leader starts with us and applying the principles of leadership in our own lives and our situation. And that includes, by the way, the same servant leadership attitudes and responses to ourselves. We unfortunately tend to be harder on ourselves than we would be on our team. And that is not as healthy as it should be. And I know that's even become, in my past, I would brag that I was harder on myself than anyone else, and realize that sounds good in theory, but it's not a healthy approach, just as it's not a healthy approach to be hard on our team members. Now, again, I'm not espousing lack of accountability. That's not that at all. It's the way we approach accountability and learning. And one of the things that we need to understand as a coach, and again, the principles of leadership fit here, is that we want to coach ourselves out of a job ultimately. In sports, that comes in the form of, like Anton was sharing, that once the game starts, the coaching stops. That's when the team begins to take over, and we have kind of coached ourselves out of business, at least for that time frame, and learning how to be comfortable with that, good with that is a part. By the way, welcome, Lee. Glad to have you on board. I hope things are going well. But yeah, we've got to coach in such a way that it leads our client into independence from us, because otherwise we're not really a coach at that point. I don't know, closer to a consultant. What would you say there, Anton?
No, 100%. Yeah, and that's something that's important to cover, because the line between coach, consultant, instructor, mentor have been blurred. And I guess I can give you my take on what those things are. A coach is somebody that is going to ask you questions. They're not going to give you an answer. And I see a lot of coaches popping up who are, marketing coaches and, health coaches, and they're not really coaches. They're health consultants, marketing consultants, because they're going to tell you exactly what to do. They have a system, a process, and they're going to teach you that process, which is also borderline an instructor in itself, right? A consultant, instructor, I would say, is kind of the most fundamental on that level, right? They are going to teach you what to do irrelevant of who you are or what your organization is, right? They just have a process, a method, a system, and all they're going to do is deliver that for you irrelevant of what your circumstance are, right? I think the next level up is a consultant. A consultant is going to come in and assess what is going on and what kind of things are going on in your business, what kind of things are going on, with your work, team, whatever it may be. And they're going to tell you exactly what to do based on what they uncovered, right? It's the step up from an instructor, because they actually took a look at the environment, but they're still going to tell you exactly what to do. They may have different processes, different, things they can do, but they'll just teach you those to you, or implement those for you. A coach is somebody that is going to ask you questions to understand your own environment. Like a coach may never have done what it is you're trying to do, right? Some of the best coaches out there, they're not experts in a specific thing that you need. They're expert at creating insight from you. The knowledge is already, the basis on coaching is that the knowledge is already inside of you, or you can obtain it somewhere else. Their job is not to provide the knowledge. Their job is to create action plans. Their job is to create insights, and for you to go and provide the answer or seek out the answer. And then the highest level is usually mentor. And mentors can behave as consultants. Mentors can behave as coaches. They've been there and they've done what you're usually trying to accomplish, and now they can help and support you getting there. The best mentors are coaches. That's the combination of somebody that is very unique and rare to find, because they've been there, they've done it. They're not trying to just tell you what to do to replicate their success, but they understand the environment very well, and now they're also skilled at asking you questions to create insights and growth.
Good clarification. And I've always told people in many situations, I'm a better coach than I am a player, especially in sports. I'm not athletic by nature, but I can certainly help coach people in athletics and be more effective than what I do as a player. Let's see. Lee makes a comment, and of course, this is very true. Accountability with compassion and empathy, so important. And I know Lee said he had to take off because he's going to vote. Encourage everyone today, take time. If you haven't already cast your vote, do so. Something that here in the U.S., we need to do and do well, because it's part of being a good citizen. So I'll stop with that commercial message there. Welcome, Professor Jagdish. Glad to have you with us always. Enjoy hearing from you. Rick makes a comment that coaching can be like herding cats, and sometimes it can be, depending on where your team is, what level they're at. But as a coach, you got to be ready to do a little cat herding. Let's see.
I like Lee's word accountability, right? I think that's the number one thing that coaches are, is they're there to hold people accountable. I've talked about this a couple of years ago, but I did a study back when I was working in wellness, and I worked with a bunch of health coaches. I surveyed 1,000 people to find out, why is it that you use us, right? Why is it that you hire us and pay us money to do things with you? And I went with a hypothesis of its knowledge, right? Most people in my field at the time thought we're there to provide knowledge. It's accountability. 55% of people responded to accountability as being the number one reason why they're there. Now, how you accomplish that accountability is going to take you from a bad coach to a good coach, right? Telling people what to do and making them feel terrible about it. That's a bad way of doing it. Coming from a place of compassion and empathy, but not ruinous empathy, right? Not so much of like, hey, you keep failing, but it's going to be all right. No, it's not going to be all right. We need to figure out why you keep failing and really face this problem head on. And you tell me what we need to do about it. But at the same time, it's not that person that comes in with a big stick all the time and smacks you no matter what happens, right? You're not sleeping well, and things are going on, say, physiologically, but your exercise is not going as good because of it. And that person is just getting mad at you because you're not performing, right? That's also the other side of that. So it's finding that accountability and a way to do it that is tailored to the person's environment. That's what coaching is all about, whether it's health coaching, whether it's leadership, whether it's family coaching, you name it. All of it. I like how Lee summarized it there.
Good. And then Professor Jagdish makes a comment: self-awareness is the beginning point for a journey towards leadership. Self-awareness is something that is the beginning point of so many things that we need to do. And it is so valuable for us to have self-awareness. And especially as a coach and leader, it's critical, because without it, you're going to find it difficult to lead others into the direction that will be most beneficial for them and help them get where they need to be. Welcome, Corinne. Glad to have you with us. And Corinne actually makes a comment, and her comment is, accountability is holding them accountable to do what they say they want. Indeed, that's a key point.
And those are the two parts, right, that are vital to success of a coaching relationship, is that you really understand what they want. Kevin mentioned the word vision before, right? They need to have that vision of truly where they want to be. Coming back to the point of a coach gets people from point A to point B. If you don't know what they really want, what are you going to accomplish? You really are not going to accomplish a whole lot. Yeah, you're going to advance them forward, but if that may or may not be in the right direction. And I see this too much. With coaching, less is more. Like some of the best coaches I've ever had, and I've had some good ones and I've had some bad ones, they may say, I don't know, in an hour, they may say a total of 5 to 10 questions, right? But they're so profound that you're sitting there talking through things for a really long time, and they're just hanging out, letting you do it. It's kind of like a therapist, right? If you've been to a good therapist, they don't talk a whole lot either. And that's where coaching takes some of the best practices from coaching are taken from therapy, where you let the person guide the conversation and you just know exactly where to insert as little of yourself as possible to get the highest level of insight from them. If you're sitting there talking the whole time as a coach, you're not coaching.
No, definitely not. And you've lost sight of the purpose of why you're there. It's not about us as a coach. Sharon makes a comment that many people consider themselves a coach or mentor, and they really are not. If you don't agree with them, then right or wrong, you're wrong in their eyes. And that is correct. And in fact, a coach it is more about not making judgments, but rather guiding their client into their own judgments, if that makes sense. Because the key is that we need them to uncover the answers to their questions rather than us telling them the answers. And that's a hard thing to do, especially when you see the answer and they're not quite getting there. The problem is if we just tell them the answer, then they haven't gone through the growth and learning process in order to lay a foundation for the change. Welcome, Jeremy. Glad to have you with us. Appreciate, as always, you being on board. So again, parallels between coaching and leading, and they are connected and not going to be able to function as one without the other and be effective. I mean, we have a lot of people that are titled coaches and are doing coaching business, but are not leaders, and their effectiveness is limited. And same way, the relationship for leaders, being able to coach your team becomes an important approach. It's about style and approach versus being a manager or boss and just as stick and carrot or big stick or whatever methodology one would use there.
And that's why I think coaching in the workplace is one of the hardest things to do. And I don't mean coaching as in hiring an external coach and bringing them on to do the coaching. I'm talking about leaders being coaches, because you know the answer most of the time. Because the stuff that you're talking about, the stuff that you're dealing with, their business just as well as they probably know their business, right? Like, meaning that the manager knows their team member's business from business standpoint. And it's so easy just to jump in and give that solution, right? It's so easy to say, hey, I've been there before. I've seen Johnny Bravo or whatever, Susie be there before, and don't do it. Like, just no matter what, don't do it. It seems easy. It seems like you're going to save a lot of time in that one-on-one conversation by simply just giving them a solution. But you're wasting time in the long run, because we already talked about that word ownership, right? Like, one of my favorite quotes that I've heard in my life is, a man or a person of whose opinion was changed against their will is of their opinion still. It's better to take the time to navigate the conversation and allow that person to arrive at that decision, or even fail a few times. Maybe it's a weekly, check-in, weekly one-on-one, and you let them go and execute on some of the things they wanted to do, knowing that they may not pan out, knowing that it may not be the best thing for them. But guess what? Insights and growth will occur from that week. And if you're a good leader and a good coach, you will build on that until they arrive at the right conclusion. But once they do, they have the ownership to run 100 miles per hour with execution. If you just gave them an answer, they don't have the ownership to go as hard and as fast and as long on that journey to success. It's just how it goes.
And you've got to add motivating them in regards to whatever that is as part of your new responsibility that you shouldn't be dealing with to start. That is, again, why leaders and coaches will burn out, is they're trying to take on responsibilities for things that they should be helping their client or mentee take on the responsibility for. And that's such a key piece that we need to work towards. I like Corinne's comment that she says that I tell my clients when I make a shift from coach to mentor and get their permission. Recognizing the nuances of the roles is important. And I like the idea of saying, okay, now I'm going to shift from this role to this role. Is that okay? Because again, buy-in and having our client agree to that change in approach or change in perspective or whatever is very valuable, and it's part of the communication and relationship there.
No, I really like that comment too. It's almost like you're imagine to yourself when you're doing that, you're taking the coaching hat off and the things that you would do and execute in that time, and you put the mentor hat on, and they're very different hats. And I love that you're asked for permission to do that, because oftentimes people may not pay us to be a mentor, right? They may pay us to be a coach and not tell them exactly what to do. But oftentimes it's also welcome, because it does save a lot of time down the path of whatever people are trying to accomplish.
And I like Jeremy's comment, and it's so true. Some coaches and advisors teach their clients to fish versus fishing for them, sort of say. That's that concept is a key concept, because that's the difference between telling people what to do and empowering them to do what is needed for them as well as for the team. Learning to teach people how to fish versus fishing for them and giving them something to eat, so to speak. It is a difference, and it is a very important difference. Welcome, Renish. Glad to have you with us. Appreciate you being here. So we're talking about coaches as leaders, and in some ways we're talking about leaders as coaches, and how the two work together to be most effective as we work and go along.
Another thing that we don't often talk about coaching yourself. It's tough, but there's certain things you can accomplish. Coaching is expensive, people. Let's get real. It's not a cheap trade, because usually the things that coaches are able to accomplish is of massive value. And that's really why coaching is so expensive, and it should be expensive. I think a good coach is $500+ per hour. And you're like, how can I spend $500 an hour on somebody that I'm making 10 times what I'm making, right? How is their 1 hour so much more worth than what my 1 hour is? Well, you only engage with them once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks or whatever it may be. So you can't think when you're working with a coach in hourly terms. It's a very bad way of looking at it. You have to look at value creation, right? How much value did that coach create? And in the long run, if it's a good coach, and usually the ones that get away with charging that much that value is significantly more than what they're going to actually charge you. You're going to continue to reap rewards of that. But some people just can't afford it. And that's realistic, right? Sometimes you just can't do it no matter what. And that's thinking about how to coach yourself, right? And I encourage people to try to do that. And a few people have mentioned the word awareness, creating self-awareness, right? It starts with that. It starts with understanding what is within you, but you haven't really slowed down enough or asked yourself the right questions to pull it out. So really asking those questions, understanding, what do I want? What keeps me from obtaining it? What tools are in my toolbox that can help me to obtain it, right? Those are just some general questions that you can sit down. The key there is to slow down enough to answer them and not just rush through the answer. Think about it for a while. A lot of times as a coach, I give homework assignments, right? I'll ask a tough question, and I'm not expecting a person in the next 5 minutes to give me an answer. I say, here's maybe what you think initially, give me what that is, but now let's go spend some time thinking about it, observing, and really, ruminating on, and then let's come back next session and let's talk about it in further detail. Do that with yourself as a person if you can't afford coaching. Ask yourself a question, come up with initial thought, write it down, then go think about it, meditate on it, pray on it, just spend time with it, ask other people about it that are in your life and see you a certain way, and then come back and answer that question again.
Yeah. You're talking about cost of a coach makes me remember the story of the big giant engine that was not working well, and everybody had tried all they knew to do, and they bring in the old guy from that's been around and knows these engines well, and he walks up and he takes his hammer and taps on the engine in the right spot a couple of times, and it fires up and goes, and he hands the bill for $10,000, and they said, well, it only took you 2 minutes, and he told them to look closely at the bill, and it said tapping on the engine was $2. The experience to know how and where to tap
Mhm.
is the $9,998 part of the bill. And that's what coaching's about, is you're paying for that insight that people can offer. Let's see. Rick makes comment. I've always led by not asking them to do anything I wouldn't do. Lead by example. And that is such a key part as a leader, to be an example. The more you show than you speak, the better the response is going to be. Let's see. Sharon makes a comment. I've tried to do that myself and it has worked well. I wouldn't ask any of my team to do something that I myself didn't know how to do it. And she agrees with Rick's comment. As a coach, and Anton shared earlier, there are sometimes, though, as a coach, that we may not have that firsthand experience to set the example. But if we're an effective coach, we know how to ask the right questions to get the person to find the example either in themselves or in someone else to help them grow into where they need to grow to.
Well, Rick and Sharon are bringing up such great points, and I think that's where some of the toughest parts come in when selecting a coach, right? People look at somebody and they're like, well, has this person done what I want to do? Do they have experience there? So they try to select the person that's most experienced, and they think that's the person that's going to bring the most value. That would be more of a consultant.
Mm-hmm.
They're not saying they're not going to call themselves a coach. This person may, but they're not probably going to coach you. They're probably going to tell you what to do and how to do it and when to do it and adjust it based on the environment that you're in. A coach, I'm telling you, some of the best coaches that I've ever worked with have zero clue on what I do. Like basic understanding because they work with many people in that field, or they work with many people in general in business, and they have some general grasp, but specifics of it, terminology, the systems, the processes, very, very little idea of what it is. But it's irrelevant because it's not their job to tell me what to do. It's their job to ask me the right question that makes me have the right aha moment, that makes me act based on the question, right? And the art of the coach is not knowledge. The art of the coach is question asking, right? Like that's a big thing that a lot of people in the world don't necessarily agree with all the time. They're like, well, why is that worth so much money? Like, because you don't ask yourself those questions the same way. You don't follow that kind of process. You don't lead to those kind of insights. You don't slow down enough to create them. And that's the tough part, because a lot of people who know what to do in the business, they're like, well, I'm not going to waste my money on that. Like, I know a lot. Why should I spend somebody just to ask me some questions? Because the insights they create is a lot of value.
Well, and I'm not sure how to measure this one, but if you want to really look for a qualified coach, figure out if they have attained wisdom in their life and wisdom in that area. That doesn't mean, again, that they're experienced. That means they have understanding of how that something works, both in someone's life and someone's world. And that's when we get into using wisdom. And when I'm, rather than referring to myself as a coach, now I have even got a hashtag that it's hashtag wise counselor. I'd rather come to you and help you find the wisdom you need to do or be what it is that you need to do or be than for me to come based on my experience and tell you what to do or how to be. If I can get you to a point where you get the wisdom and insight for yourself, then I have set you up to then grow and become more of what or who you need to be or do what you need to do without being dependent on me.
I have to jump because I got to get to the office, but I'm going to leave the audience with one kind of final thought on coaching. Don't look for a coach that's experienced in what you do. Look for an experienced coach. And the difference is, right, when you're looking at assessing coaches, an experienced coach will tailor their questions to you, right? They will tailor your questions to, even more importantly, to your responses. It's the question is not predetermined before you responded to the previous thing. It is adjusted based on what you have said. A less experienced coach will usually have a list of questions they're going to ask you from a template and run through it, which is good, right? It's still going to create some insights and things like that. But it's just not tailored to the environment, to the moment that you're in. And really, that's the difference between $100 coach and $1,000 coach, is them being able to listen so well to know exactly what to say with as little, those little as little statement as possible, sorry, as little words as possible, I should say, and being able to create the most impact for what it is that you're thinking about in that moment. But Kevin, we'll keep going. I'm gonna jump off because I gotta get to work. Thank you all so much, Kevin. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one there, bro. One of the things, maybe a way to explore someone that is going to be more effective coach or not, is when you meet with them, see if they do more telling or more asking, because a more effective coach, again, is going to function by asking the right questions. And if they know how to, first of all, find the questions, and then second of all, if they know how to ask those questions, they're going to be more effective to help you as their client find the answers that you need, rather than feeding you the answers they think you need. And that maybe that's a helpful way to look at it, is that do they spend time initially more about telling you things, or do they spend time more initially about asking you things? I know when I meet with a potential client, I spend a lot of time with exploring them and their situation. First of all, to find out if there's even a good fit, and make sure, because I do not want to take on a client that I am going to not be effective in, for two reasons. One, that doesn't serve my client well. Second of all, it doesn't give me much of a reputation if I am going to coach them knowing that all I'm going to do is to sell them a little plan or idea or even a book. And that's not the effective way to do real coaching. And Nada makes a comment, and this is so true. Coaching is an art, a very fine art, and not something that it can solely be taught by learning technical skills. Certainly want to be knowledgeable of those technical skills, but what we want to find is a coach that is learning how to use their gifts, their talents and abilities in the form of an art to help us get where or what we want to be in the process. And so, very important. All of this factors into coaching and leading, because again, they are very closely tied, and it is difficult to be one without the other and be most effective. And so we need to go back to some of the thoughts that have come up. One is self-awareness. That is a key part for any one of us for any reason, but especially for those of us that are going to be coaches, leaders, that we need to be self-aware, because in order for us to help others become self-aware, which is part of the process of an effective coach and leader, we have to have practiced self-awareness ourselves, understand that process. And it's so important that we have that versus many other possible skill sets, because where we need to start for a client is them to become self-aware. And as they become self-aware, quite often just that very act helps them begin to get answers to their questions, to how to move forward most effectively, or how to overcome that obstacle that seems to be in the way. And so self-awareness is a great start. We talked about vision. If we are a leader, we're sharing our vision to be shared with our team. If you're a coach, you need to find out from your client what is their vision, because you trying to get them to follow your vision as a coach is not going to be effective. The key is you need to know what their vision is and then help them with the right questions of how to begin to define it, and also begin to build direction towards that vision. So vision is another key piece in this process. And then asking the questions, such an important piece. Learning how to ask the right questions is more important quite often than the technical knowledge. In fact, there is even some courses that I took one on LinkedIn by Joshua Miller on effective questioning. And it's great help to learn the ways to ask the right questions. And by the way, the easiest or the most foundational part of asking good questions is listening. The more we learn to be effective listeners as a coach or a leader, the more we're going to be effective in finding the right questions to ask of that person in that situation. And so listening and observing are another part of being an effective coach and leader. And again, observing. And one of the challenges we face, and this is something that I have learned to work with and am continuing to learn and practice, is the idea of when we are a coach or a leader, there's nothing wrong with what's known as dead air. The term comes from a radio term, and that is when the radio is broadcasting and there's nobody there to be sending out music or message. It's called dead air. And we quite often are very uncomfortable with that. But as a good, effective coach and leader, we need to learn to get comfortable with that dead air, that pause, because that is sometimes when the best thinking goes on, when we give room for it. And so, again, tying together coaching and leadership, they are connected, and you can be one, you can be the other, but the most effective in either is being both together. Real important concept to get. So I hope that today you're walking away with some new insights into being a coach and leader and how they're connected, that you've gotten some good tips from each other and from Anton and myself that you can use to go forward to be a more effective coach and leader in the space that you work and live in going forward. So thanks, everyone. Unless there are further questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up. I appreciate having an hour, but we only use the time that is needed. Hopefully, we have given you something to think about today, something that will help you move forward in being a coach and leader, or maybe insight into how to select a coach or leader, or both. So thanks, everyone, and we will be back next Tuesday, 8 o'clock. Eastern time, which is now Eastern Standard Time because of time change. And I hope that you'll join us again. And if you have recommendations for topics for us to cover, please let us know. And if you happen to be watching this as a recording and you have an idea for a topic, please feel free to put it in the comments, because we check back and monitor the responses and comments, even for those that watch on the recording. So thanks, everyone. Have an amazing week. Be blessed. And we will hopefully see you back next week at 8 o'clock Tuesday morning with the Human SOS Show. Thanks, everyone. Bye.